Has anybody got any corrections?
Recommend we approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Any objections? Okay.
Can I just email your document?
Unfinished
This is an
business.
attachment.
Well, it doesn't seem we have any unfinished business at this time, so we can move on. Okay, new business, transit-oriented development. The first, I noticed Kathy is not here. I would like to amend to have her come at the end, after the fifth slated presentation, where she'll answer questions about the TODs. And so, is that approved?
No problem.
Any objections?
No objection.
Okay. Okay, then I'd like to introduce Peter Fleshbar. American Planning Association, Hawaii chapter, and he's done a number of studies on the mainland, and he's going to give us a presentation that was partially given to us at a September 16th meeting, or 19th meeting in 2007.
Well, thank you for inviting me to return. The projector, I believe, is working today. I put a copy of a questionnaire on the back table. I have a student in my transportation planning course this semester who is doing a term project, and she's analyzing some data that we collected in November. The research for this presentation is from a project that I worked on with Randolph Sykes, sitting over here, last year for the City Council. Before you, don't fill out the questionnaire now, it's strictly voluntary. I would like you to watch the video, not the video, but the presentation first, and then at your leisure you can fill it out. Also, I have a few copies of the paper that I distributed last September. I think I have 5 or 6 copies. If you didn't get a copy, see me afterwards. It's also available on a website that I'll show at the end of this presentation. Today I'm going to talk about what can we learn from other cities about transit-oriented development. That was my role in the project for City Council, to do case studies of TOD in other cities. I'll focus on these 9 questions: the origin of TOD, what is TOD today, what drives demand for TOD, what land uses are typically mixed together in TOD, how far will people walk to a transit station, what design features of TOD encourage that walking, what densities, residential densities in particular, support transit ridership, why do people live in TODs, and can TOD parking standards be lowered to provide community benefits, which I understand is before the City Council, a bill like this. I have 60 slides, so they'll go pretty quick. The origin of TOD dates back to the streetcar suburbs of a century ago, up until World War II. The developers built these streetcar lines to serve their projects that were adjacent to the stations. The development was pedestrian-oriented, mixed use, and moderate density, and there was a good balance between place and node. The node is actually the transit station, and this is from a map of the, I believe, the Washington Metro system. And then the place is actually the land uses that surround that station. Here are various TODs, these circles along a transit line. The purple is within, say, a quarter mile or 10-minute walk of the transit station. The blue is actually what was called the transit influence zone. It's up to about half mile from the station. The actual shape of it, it depends on the street grid, of course. It's not this round necessarily. And then you have these auto-oriented trip sheds. You can imagine people from a suburban area driving to a parking lot, say a park and ride lot, and getting on the transit. And then the question comes up, where should these park and ride lots be located? And the theory is that they should generally be located in the suburbs. Initially, transit planners for systems that were built in the 70s focused on these park and ride lots in the suburban areas with the thought that eventually they would be converted to housing so that people could walk to the stations. This didn't always happen. Particularly in the Bay Area, commuters felt that these lots, they had a vested right in these lots and they didn't like to let them go to development. So what is Todd today? Basically it's compact, mixed use, pedestrian friendly. It consists of higher densities within say a 10-minute walk of stations, a place where you have a mixture of land uses, walkable design for pedestrians, well integrated with the transit system, and managed parking around the station. Here you see a Todd, these red buildings, for example. Todd seems to work best where congestion is perceived to be bad, housing prices are rising, driving costs are high due to parking charges and gas prices. And the transit system is extensive, affordable, and convenient. It's believed that Todd provides a safer place in which to walk, ride a bicycle, and catch a train, bus, or streetcar. And this is what we call the ideal. Finding that ideal isn't always possible, however. Todds, in theory, offer more convenient and healthy lifestyles, and the ability to walk to shops and services, to support local businesses, and generally to be more active. Here are two pictures of Todd's, the Jameson Square in Portland's Pearl District, and I chose Transit Village in Fruitvale, California, because we're going to hear a talk on Fruitvale later. Most Todds are served by some type of rail transit system because it represents a fixed investment, so developers are confident that they can do the higher density development around that station, as opposed to a bus Todd. There are some bus Todds, but they're just less prevalent. Honolulu's transit engineers, as you know, favor an elevated fixed guideway transit line, much like this one in Vancouver. And this is the Todd at Citygate at the main station. You can see it entering the building. Whether or not we'll have something like this in Honolulu, I'm not sure. Most of the Todds on the West Coast, and I visited all the cities on the West Coast in the past 10 years, or actually 15 years, from Vancouver to San Diego, except for the Vancouver system, which is fully grade separated. Most of the other ones are light rail systems in the U.S. and run on surface in streets in many cases. Which raises the question, does a fixed guideway for a rail transit need to be at street level for Todd to be successful? And my answer on this is still out. I haven't really resolved this in my own mind yet. What drives demand for Todd? It seems to work best where traffic is getting worse and people are willing to take transit. It's also affected by shifting demographics, which I'll talk about in a little more detail. Housing consumers who want more livability, choice, and affordability in the housing market. Todd is really the end. Transit is the means to the end, but Todd is actually the end that people are looking for, that some people are looking for in the market. It's also driven by the fact that the FTA, or Federal Transit Administration, policies encourage cities to adopt TOD. With regard to the demographics, the projections are that by 2050, roughly half of our population nationwide will be non-white. The demographic groups that are growing most quickly are the older people, much like many of you in this room, I'm afraid, including myself. Non-family, non-white households have historically used transit more. Between 1950 and 1990, the primary demand was for single-family housing. 40% of total housing dollars were spent on single-family development. Today we see a shift in demand for apartments, loft apartments, townhouses, and mid-rise development, occupied by these two different groups at the opposite ends of the age spectrum. Basically, first-time home buyers between, say, 25 and 35, and then the baby boomers who are about to retire. Some of these baby boomers about to retire, known as empty nesters, no longer having families at home, basically are the fastest growing group in our population, and many of them prefer proximity to public transit. And I'll count myself as one of these groups. This is our competition in Honolulu. This is the number of New Start projects nationwide in preliminary engineering and final design. The pot for transit money is, if you can imagine a pot that I'm holding in my hands, this is the pot of money, but the demand for that money is like this. So each city has to be a little bit more competitive in trying to get that share of funds. One way to do that is to have transit supportive land use policies in place that might increase ridership on the transit system and make the system more cost effective. Question 4, what land uses are typically mixed together in TOD? Well, typically it's mixed commercial, or a mixture of commercial and residential, or mixed residential and retail. There are a variety of TODs serving either fixed route and shuttle buses, light and heavy rail, intercity rail service. I'll show you an example later of that. And TODs that are built in both urban and suburban sites, greenfield sites, which would be farmland, grayfield, which would be something like a parking lot, or brownfield sites, say in an industrial area. They can be small or large-scale sites, usually typically 5+ acres, and can be on existing surface parking lots. I just want to run through a quick case study of Portland. Portland seems to be a leader in TOD development, according to Rubin's study in 2007. And I'll focus on the Orenco station, which is in Hillsborough, 10 miles west of the downtown area. Orenco station has a mixture of land uses. Here's the station here. Here's some of the surrounding land uses in different color. We have apartments and condos, older residential, a school, apartments over there. And by the way, these pictures kind of go with the questionnaire that I distributed, so you might want to pay particular attention to them. Some of the design issues that my students are interested in are people interested in this kind of development, basically offices over retail stores, and these are all from Orenco. Row houses over office space. The office space is actually in the sub-basement, which you can access from the sidewalk, actually. Housing above retail stores, and there is some parking. Row houses and condominiums. You can see that they do pay particular attention to the quality of design in these TODs. To summarize, successful TOD buildings have a more human scale, a mixture of both horizontal and vertical. It could be either horizontal or vertical land uses. In other words, like you saw in the picture, retail, housing over retail. Or it could be housing next to retail. That would be the horizontal mixture. Ground floor office space and retail space, lots of window space at the street, frequent doorways, and no blank walls. Blank walls are basically uninteresting to pedestrians. Question 5, how far will people walk to a transit station? I think we covered this. A TOD is typically up to a quarter mile from the station, but the influence zone is up to a half mile from the station. And this slide from the Transit Cooperative Research Program shows that the highest percentage using transit are people who are close to the station. That percentage drops off the further you go from the station. So people within, I say, a half-mile radius are 5 times as likely to walk to the transit stop than others. Okay, number 6, what design features of Todd encourage walking? Well, these are some of those features, and I'll show you illustrations of that. Things like the careful attention to street design and the streetscape, traffic buffering to protect pedestrians, the block size, and the land use mixture. Todds tend to have more interesting streetscapes like this picture from Boulder, Colorado, which is actually served by a bus TOD. And there are guidelines for streetscape dimensions as shown here, and we won't go into that because this is too much detail. Blank walls basically do not attract pedestrians, and so this is why we pay attention to the streetscape. Is there an ideal city block size for TOD? Tend to be smaller blocks, encourage walking and increase transit usage, as shown here. An ideal grain might be, these are blocks now, 250 feet by 350 feet. And a regular street grain seems to be favorable. An example is Portland's Pearl District has this kind of regular grid pattern. This is just north of the downtown area. What residential densities support transit? Well, typically higher densities encourage transit and walking and discourage automobile use. The Transit Cooperative Research Program suggested these minimum residential densities. They were taken from San Diego, Washington County, which is west of Portland, and then Portland TriMet TOD guidelines for both rail and bus. And typically the densities are from, say, about maybe, well, it depends, from 8 to 25 or 30. Now the question is, what is needed to support livable density? Here are 2 examples of higher density, say 50 to 100 dwelling units per acre, but on the left you see these are elevator apartments. These on the right are walk-up apartments. And they're favored by different segments of the housing market. Here's another example, both 30 to 50 units per acre, but the actual design of those units is quite different. Why do people live in Todds? Well, the number 1 reason is actually the type or quality of housing. The quality of the neighborhood, the cost of housing are the more important reasons. According to this study by Holly Lund in California, access to transit is actually 5th on the list. Typically, you'll have a 2-earner, especially in high-cost cities of California, you have 2-earner households. One person might rely on transit and the other on automobile. I actually used to live in a TOD when I lived in Mountain View, California, before moving to Hawaii in 1980. This particular TOD is Cypress Point Townhomes. It had 12 dwelling units per acre and was about 5 to 10 minute walk to the Caltrans station on Castro Street, which is the main street in Mountain View. This is my unit right here. It's a 2-level unit. It extensively used landscaping to protect privacy. Each unit had a skylight. The living part of the units was actually on the 2nd floor. The kitchen and dining room and living room were on the 2nd floor. The sleeping areas were on the bottom floor. And I really appreciated that during the summer times because it was cooler on the 1st floor during the summer. Well, that skylight allowed us to, it flooded the living area with lots of light. You didn't need to turn on your electric lights during the day. And this balcony provided excellent views of the complex. I think this was a 55 dwelling units in this complex. So imagine this. It's hard to believe that something like this would be that close to a suburban transit station. Can TOD parking standards be lowered to provide community benefits? I'm going to show you an example of Collingwood Village at SkyTrain's Joy Station in Vancouver as an example where the developer was allowed to reduce the parking from 1.35 to 1.04 stalls per dwelling unit based on a study that he did. Actually, he showed that the TODs could get by with 0.6 to 0.7 parking stalls, but the city said, no, you have to provide at least one stall per dwelling unit. Well, what this allowed the developer to do was to provide better pedestrian access to the SkyTrain station in the site plan. And some residents said that they really enjoyed that, having that access. The developer also used the money that was saved to improve the streetscape and to provide security improvements and other amenities to the village area. This was a result of what's called a community benefits agreement, which Randolph and I were exploring in our project for City Council last year in the core area of Honolulu. The developer also installed acoustic treatments to apartments facing the transit line to lower noise levels as a result of this community benefits agreement. This is a good source of information that I cited throughout my talk today, the Transit Cooperative Research Program, Report 102, by Robert Cervero and many others that came out a few years ago. It's on the web. You can download it. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues at UH, Dr. Sharon Miyashiro, who is the principal investigator of our City Council project, Transit-Oriented Community-Based Development. We just submitted our report to the City Council. Isn't that right, Randolph? I think
It's still in its final edit.
Oh, it's still in the final edit. Okay. And I'd also like to acknowledge my research assistants, Rosalind Fernandez, Seong-Soo Kim, and Evelyn Tenario. And she's the one who's doing this project for my class this semester, the survey that I distributed. And then the various slide credits are shown here. And for a copy of the paper, if I run out today, I have 6 copies left. Please visit this website, www.hawaiiapa.org, and click on News and Announcements. The paper is actually titled Transit and Transit-Oriented Development, an issue paper of the APA Hawaii chapter, which my colleagues at APA and I worked on last year. And the paper that I distributed last September is in Appendix B.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter. We're going to save the questions until after all the presentations are made. The next presentation will be Tom Berg, and he's a member of the Ever Pedestrian Coalition. Founding member, sorry.
While this is getting going, there's a handout up front titled Fruitless in Fruitvale. My name is Tom Berg. I'm an Ever Beach resident. I'd like to talk about the side effects to TOD. I also have some reading material, War on the Dream by Wendell Cox. If you're looking for the truth on TODs and another angle on what they're really all about, The Best Laid Plans by Randall O'Toole, The Voluntary City, and my favorite, Don't Call It Sprawl. If everyone could like to go to the handout, on the back page or the front page, this is what a high density looks like in Hawaii. Reality is we're not Vancouver. Reality is we're not Oakland. Reality is we get 12 people plus living in a 1-bedroom unit. That's reality. So this is a high density apartments that are in the vicinity of a region of a TOD planned along Farrington Highway in Waipahu. This is what is by design they want to bring to our landscape. I'm going to talk over the video to expedite my time here. Let's just let it run. Thank you. This is Fruitvale Village, November 12th, between 4:30 and 5 o'clock p.m. on a Monday. The key here is to get the sound so you can hear the train go by. Thank you. Police plastered all around Fruitvale. Not a very successful place. Here's another one. They can't rent them out. Okay? Businesses. Here's Bento for $3.99. 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Not a soul in there. Can't get a customer. Looked to me like the businesses were hurting. Here's where all the buses come. They don't need the TOB. They don't need transit stations. As simple as getting on and off a bus. Right next to the TOB. Above is the size of a football field. Requires a lot of personnel. Requires ticket booth agents, information booths, security. This is the parking structure that everyone has to walk to the shop to go see if their car is still there at the end of the day. Think we can afford a parking structure at $1 an egg?
Oh yeah, I'm getting everything.
Security. More personnel. Someone to talk to you. Make sure you got your tickets squared away. So when they talk about trains being driverless, it's a very high-intensity employment operation. Requires a lot of bodies. Elevator was actually out of service. Escalator was actually out of service. They say they're all working, but they weren't. Gotta take the stairs. Now, if people get out here,
you need to purchase it where you're going.
We're
We're
tourists.
just going to go inside, take pictures of the house.
They don't want you
You
to take
can't come
cameras.
in and take
They don't want you
pictures.
taking photographs. At a bus station, you can take all the photographs you want. But at a TOD and a transit, no thanks. Tell that to the tourists. This is a drinking establishment. Usually at 5 o'clock after work, you go have a cocktail, an adult beverage. Not a soul in the building. Not a soul in the place. Here's that one for me. 65, 85 decibels. Sound of a leaf blower. That's what they want to bring along Farrington Canal. A leaf blower every 5 minutes. Police. The train's the length of a football field, therefore the station has to be the length of a football field. Everybody gets on and off at the same time. Look how long that train is. That's the only way they can get the ridership and the numbers that they claim they're getting. Is to pretend that all these cars are full. This is in proximity to where the restaurants can't get any customers because they can't hear each other. Very difficult to conduct business. Let's take a look at a photo here. This is a photo of the transit station up above. A glimpse. I'm at midterm here. I'm in the middle of this. So you got 50 yards going one way, 50 yards going the other way. 100 feet. Transit police. BART police. Let's look now at the front page of my report. Transit police. I made a phone call today. Of November 2007, statistics reveal that the Honolulu Police Department has 310 vacancies. Can't afford to fill 300, they're shorthanded. If you look at police officers alone, we're looking at 231 vacancies. They can't keep police officers here in Honolulu. The pay isn't what they would like. Transit stations, all 19 of them in the first segment, are going to require and need transit police to tell people like me you can't take your camera here. Okay? Tell people you can't rollerblade, you can't bike, can't use your skateboard. Someone's got to enforce these things. So it's very high, I don't know what the right word would be, but it requires a lot of personnel. And so transit police, got to man the ticket booths, got to man the information booths, maintenance personnel. Someone's got to fix those escalators. Someone's got to fix those elevators. Someone's got to fix the LED displays. Someone's got to make sure that the gate to turnstiles are working. It just goes on and on and on at these transit stations. Parking garages. An entire fleet of personnel will be needed to clean and maintain these and make sure that everybody is obeying the rules. I have an article here that was published in the Star Bulletin on December 9th, Gathering Place. A little bit more detail on Fruitless and Fruitvale. Rep. Cabanilla believes that House Bill 2783 is the answer. However, it did not make the deadline. It is now dead, technically. However, House Bill 2783, in the article, the midweek, would allow the GET tax collected to be used for highway technology. Currently, Act 1247 for the GET mass transit tax prohibits Oahu, any county over 500,000 of population, to use the tax for highway technology. So when we're discussing managed lanes, hot lanes, and the whole get-go, couldn't do it to begin. The whole scoping process was flawed. The entire alternative analysis process was skewed. And if we want to talk about putting someone on the Phileas system or a bus driver having a body and the argument to say don't go with this because a train doesn't need a person to run it, you just saw an example of how much money this is going to take, how many people it's going to take. And again, we can't fill the police beats at our parks, on our beaches, lifeguards, but somehow, out of thin air, we're going to pull up all the transit police officers we need are just going to magically appear. So I just want to let everybody know again that I think that the side effects of TODs are the worst thing we can do for this environment, for the people of Hawaii, and I want to thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. The next one is Clip Slayer of HonoluluTraffic.com, and he will make a presentation on TOD.
Just to let everyone know, my team didn't make the playoffs, so that's why I'm this way.
Our view is as graphic as Tom's, but first off, the proponents are looking at the whole Todd and Rail Transit Alliance. I'm going to be talking about the fact that the proponents are looking backwards in time, and when you look at the actual results of Todd's, you see why they're not effective. It's kind of a return to the past. These two images here are both from the transit-oriented-development.org site. Okay, and these, if you look at that, if you've been to one of the old towns in Germany, the Altstadts, that's what that reminds me of. And here this looks like it's Italian. A little boutique here. Naturally, no Costco, no Home Depot around here. But this is, this is the vibrant, dense neighborhoods needed for cars. So there's 4 questions.
we want to raise. Does the public appreciate the higher density, vibrant neighborhoods of TOD? Well, I don't, not heard quite what they mean by vibrant. When I think of vibrant, I'm thinking Chinatown, Waikiki, some parts of Waikiki, and perhaps someone has other ideas on that. Second is, do TODs increase transit ridership? Do TODs result in less automobile use? And number 4, do TODs reduce traffic congestion? Well, does the public appreciate higher density, vibrant neighborhoods? I don't think so, because they're not willing to pay the price. There is not a TOD that is not subsidized. We have asked everybody about that, and I'd be glad to hear if anybody knows of one, but I have not found one. What gets these people to buy these places is that the developers are sufficiently subsidized so that the price gets down to something that people are willing to pay. So if you've got an apartment that is half the price of what it costs to build, yes, you can get people if you get the price down low enough. So it's huge subsidies. The same about $1.3 billion just on the bus system. Again, I'm saying this is a return to the past. We should be looking to the future. We're getting away from mass to individual. You can now go and get a car where you could very well be the only person in the world with a car with all those attributes. And compare that to when public transportation peaked and Henry Ford said you can have any color on your Model T as long as it's black. So we've gone individual instead of mass. We talk about customization in regular business. We customize as much as we can, and here what is happening is we're trying to revert to dense and mass transportation. People don't want to live in these. People don't want to raise kids in these kind of environments. And you see that when you're in Portland. My wife pointed it out to me. She said there's no children here when we run around these talks. So that's another acronym for TODs, Transit-Oriented Developer Subsidies. And for those of you who saw the movie, I'll leave you with this one. TODs must be crazy. And this is what we believe is the way that will improve what everybody says is our problem. Our problem is traffic congestion. Our problem is not public transportation. And let me see you one more time. By the way, this is congestion in 1890. That was when congestion was really a problem, and they weren't worried about sprawl. They talked about dispersal. Dispersal was the biggest thing that they talked about. If only they could get the masses out of the city and disperse them out into the suburbs that'll be healthier, et cetera, et cetera. And the plans talked about that all the way through from 1880 through 1930. And it is healthy. Thank you. That's the end of that. And
thank you very much. Kathy, would you like to close now?
I was only asked to be available for questions, so I'm available for questions.
Okay, then it's open to questions then to everybody, including Peter, Cliff, or Tom, and Kathy. Kathy, maybe you could give us a rundown of what's happened at the City Council. You introduced 5 bills.
Well,
Oh,
since I last made a presentation, and I regret that was the worst presentation we ever did because of the mix up on the technology. But the draft bill was heard by Planning Commission on January 30. They unanimously recommended approval of our bill. Thank you to ARP, Chuck Carroll, and a number of others who commented on the draft. It went to City Council. It had first reading today. and it will be assigned to the executive committee, executive matters committee. Along with our bill were 3 previously proposed amendments to the zoning code that related to reduced parking across the board to projects around transit stations. And the third bill had to do, the third council bill had to do with allowing hotel use around any of the transit stations in a conditional use permit. The department recommended not to support those 3 initiatives because in our bill, as you may know, we're proposing first that you have a plan developed for each of the stations. It's a community-based plan, and we say community in the broadest sense. It's not just residents, it's landowners, it's businesses. So we wanted that to go forward first before we actually adopt standards or zoning restrictions. So we recommended that the planning commission not adopt those. Planning commission agreed, and so it went with a proposal for denial to the city council. And all 4 bills, again, are going to be heard in executive matters committee, not the zoning committee, but the executive matters.
All right, does anybody in the audience have questions then?
I got a question for Cliff. You gave those,
What do you do?
My name's Alan Gale, Leeward Construction Coalition.
you gave some statistics about Portland. I think you said that, I don't remember, it was 1970, what date that ridership was in public transportation was 7.2%, and it went down to currently 5.7%. Where did those figures come from, and what number of riders are there? How much has the population increased in that period in Portland?
Okay, it comes from the 1960 to 2000 FHWA report.
Can't hear yours.
Journey to work trend. Sorry.
You can't hear you, just say it out.
The data that he's referring to comes from the Federal Highway Administration book. It's called 1960 to 2000 Journey to Work Trends. Very interesting. Gives the exact data and the number of people. There's been an increase in the number of people, but nothing like the increase in the population, which is, you know, why the percentage goes down. Okay, and you know, as I was saying earlier, the percentage is critically important, because if you just maintain the same percentage like Vancouver does, then for every 100,000 you get 80,000 more drivers, and in Vancouver's case, 11,000 more riders. So any increase in population, you're done for.
Okay.
There's a publications online.
Yes. Okay, Gail Evans.
Yes. Having done extensive research on parking and limiting the supply from London, England to Portland, Oregon, and these Todd's area, I haven't found a place where they did not have problems resulting because the parking then invaded the rest of the neighborhoods. In Portland, they have terrible fights because the tenants of the Todds go and park in the surrounding neighborhoods. They park in the driveways, they park on their yards. So I would like to know if the Todd presenters can tell us where are the examples where limiting parking did not cause negative impact on the surrounding areas. I can have it sent to us if you don't have it.
Peter, would you like to answer that question, or Kathy?
I don't have that information.
Okay. Peter?
Where did it not impact negatively? The only one I'm familiar with is the Collingwood Village Todd that we presented, and I don't know whether I don't think it negatively impacted the surrounding community, but I don't know that. I don't have any data to back up that statement.
Okay, yes, go ahead. Yes.
Ms. Twilight, I just have a question. The sound, like when it was presented, it was really loud. okay, Hawaii is going to protect our environment. We're going to all this green, you know, think green and everything. We're going to quiet cars. Why are we gonna allow something that's gonna be that noisy, that loud, that unsafe for our children? And
Okay.
I'm kind of, doesn't make
Noise problem,
sense.
right. Who would like?
I'd like to comment on that. If I can.
No, wait a minute. I want to get, Kathy?
No, I'm not the transit person.
Okay.
You need a transport expert to answer that, I think, and maybe Peter can.
Well, as I understand, we have an expert panel picking the technology, and they're considering quieter technology, so it hasn't been, I mean, this BART system is a steel wheel on steel rail. It's not clear yet whether we're going to have a steel wheel on steel rail. In the case of Fruitvale, the history was that the BART planners wanted a parking structure there, and then the Unity Council, which was this was a distressed neighborhood, mostly of Hispanic and increasingly Asian, and basically they convinced BART that they wanted to create a community around this station. So it was their decision, not the planners of the transit system, that created that project that you presented.
Okay. Tom, did you?
Yeah, there was an article in the Honolulu Advertiser some time ago that referenced the steel on steel to be, I can't remember if it was 85 decibels, but they likened it to a leaf blower. And what I didn't mention in my presentation was that in my entire proximity of when the trains were going by, it felt like an earthquake. It shakes.
Okay.
The ground actually shakes. So it's not just noise, there's actually vibrations in the vicinity as well.
Mary, go ahead.
Question for Kathy. I'm Mary Prothero with AARP. We're very anxious to see the Waipahu Community Plan. The process which we observed was superb, and I'm wondering when the actual community plan is going to be available for public look-see.
The plan is not expected to be finalized till the summer, but they will be in a public meeting in the latter part of April, where they give their preliminary recommendations, general floor area, general changes to zoning, how they want to kind of, I'm giving you a tantalizing commercial on it, park space, breaking down the big blocks to make them more connected, more pedestrian friendly, those sort of things. All of those things will be presented at their next meeting, the second half of April.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I have a question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Identify yourself.
Albert Del Rio, I live downtown, real estate broker.
Okay.
Transit-oriented development, if I want some building, Dillingham Plaza, Evil A, Kapalama, somewhere along the route, will you give me zoning now and sewers so I can build today? Why do I need the transit to get zoning and sewers?
You can ask for zoning today.
But you won't give it to me.
I don't know, because I don't have the application in front of me. So,
No, I've been to the planning department, they've been denying zone change applications all along these areas for the past 10 years.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll have our line right at this moment. You can see Kathy afterwards.
Chair, that's a very important comment, Chair. Can I make a comment on that, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Quick comment, Mr. Chair? It has to do with what he's mentioning about permitting.
Well, okay, hold on for a moment. Anybody else has a question? Oh, it's Scott. I want to give other people a chance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So many of the statistics and the projections about the fallacies of transit-oriented development suggest that a mass transit solution still won't solve our transportation crisis. And I respect the citing of statistics and research. However, in light of the fact that oil has closed at $100 a barrel yesterday, and most economists predict that this trend will continue into the summer driving session, to what degree are we taking into account this new paradigm of the cost of driving a car? And are we taking this into account when we cite these trends as a fallacy in transit-oriented development? And is it in fact possible that 10 years from now, our highways will increase in their carrying capacity because the average size of a vehicle will be smaller and we will restripe our roads? And so I think we have to be so careful predicting the future based on past analysis and assuming trends stay the same, because I could have bought a barrel of oil for less than $50 3 years ago, and now I'm hoping it doesn't hit $110 and crush our economic backbone, which is tourists. So my question, which is slightly rhetorical, is how sure are we that mass transit isn't a solution? How sure are we that we won't authorize many cars?
Okay, I think we've got to see, one of the things that we like to do,
Cliff, could you stand up so everybody can hear you?
one of the things that we like to do, which the city doesn't seem to want to do, is to look at comparables. Okay, in other words, if we're saying that $8 gas won't change things very much, okay, then we can go over and look at Europe. And while they use transit a little more, okay, the trend line with Europe, in Europe is exactly the same. And moving out to the suburbs, declining use of public transportation, declining use of bicycles, all the trends that we talk about are happening there. In fact, he talked about Wendell Cox giving a speech. Wendell teaches it in the summer in Paris, and so he was giving a talk in Los Angeles and talked about this particular city where all the trends were happening the same as in Los Angeles, and then about 10 minutes into it, he said, by the way, I'm not talking about Los Angeles. He says, I'm talking about Paris. Okay? So you do get the same, all the same trend with $8 gas. Okay, and so that's what we're looking at.
Is there any more questions?
No, my question was relevant in the sense that.
Okay, but I think
I mean, I didn't get an answer to my question.
Kathy and you.
No, that isn't. That's for these fellows over here. Is it necessary to have this transit to build out along the transit corridor? That's my question. What's the answer?
Yeah. Okay.
Ron, what's their answer over there?
Yeah, it's between planning and it's a separate subject with planning. You have to take it up with them. It's not part of this activity here, not part of CAC.
Okay.
You know, Charles,
If I may,
Ron.
I'm the parliamentarian, and I'm actually here for training. There's a couple of things that I've noticed during this discussion. Number one, people were asked if they have questions about what was presented.
Right.
That's the subject that we're here for.
Right.
I've heard two different kinds of things happening. The people that want to ask the questions first want to tell a story. You're not allowed to do that. You're allowed to ask questions. If you want to build your case, do it when you're asked to give your briefing. Second of all, the people that are responding aren't responding to the question, okay? But the question must be pertinent to the information that's being presented, or you're wasting everyone's time here. And the purpose for the meeting is to get the information, discuss the information that was presented, and then get on to whether you want to make any motions on it.
Okay.
Sorry, but that's by parliamentary rule.
Right.
Second of all, when you're in these discussions, some people have been speaking 4 and 5 times. They are not entitled to do that. You've got a single item. Each person is entitled to 2 speeches. Once they get to their 4th speech, they're done.
Okay. All right then. At that point, then we'll go on to the next. Unless there's somebody else who has a question.
I do.
Hasn't asked it before.
I haven't asked yet. Joe Francher, One Hill Village, Lincoln Village. For Dr. Flashbart, what existed in these TODs before the TODs came to be? Were they flat land, gray land, or they?
Well, in the case of the Collingwood Village project, that was an abandoned industrial site. It really varies. On the mainland, there's some cities, in order to reduce costs, they route the alignment through abandoned industrial areas because the acquisition of land is cheaper. That's a short-sighted decision, in my opinion, because afterwards you don't have the built-in ridership that you're looking for. It's a little bit more difficult to route it through activity centers. You know, it's costlier to do that, and that's what we're attempting to do here locally.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. You have a question?
I have a question
Go
for
ahead.
Cliff Slater. Cliff, my question is that in terms of cost, how much would it cost to fully construct your concept? In other words, what would be the most liberal estimate for how much hot lanes would cost for Hawaii?
We have a conservative estimate.
Okay.
Less than $1 billion, and we have a protest at the moment to USDOT on the way the city's calculated the thing. It doesn't compute at all with the experience of others in Florida.
Oh, yeah, we're not talking about hot lanes, we're talking about tides. Would you identify yourself for Marion?
Tom Bird?
No, the one who just asked the question.
Daniel Shoots DeGracia.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any more questions? First time? Yeah. Tom, you had plenty.
I want to respond to the permitting.
No, please. Let's go on. Question, go ahead.
Question about the TODs. I think it's very built close to the sidewalk area. What is the, I guess, width of the sidewalk area to the building, I guess, base? Is it more conventional? Don't you have a little setback area, or I don't know how some of them are, but the samples I did show did seem as though there was no landscaping in front. So my question is, what is this width of the sidewalk, and why is it built so
Okay.
close?
Kathy, I know you want to go fast, but go ahead.
Sorry, I have a meeting in like
Yeah.
tonight.
Could you answer that?
Generally, there is at least a plaza area, reading room, some kind of entry feature that'll take you to the station, however the station is designed, and that's pretty consistent what we'll probably see from the consultants in April for Whitehall.
Okay. Thank you very much, then. We'll get on to the next business. That is the update on the Public and Private Partnership Subcommittee. And Scott Belfort is the chair of that committee, and will give a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think most everyone in the room knows that we have a subcommittee to research public-private partnerships. I think I mentioned last month in an update that we had set our course to be one of research. Sorry, I think that I mentioned last month that we had set a course to make this research objective and to try to come back to the Citizens Advisory Committee with pros and cons about public-private partnership, using our role to investigate. So this last month, in fact last week, we discussed the cons of public-private partnerships, having discussed the pros the month before. Our homework right now is that we are sharing through email kind of a summary list of the pros and cons of public-private partnerships. We will meet once again to be sure that we captured everything that those who attended felt was appropriate via pro or con, and then we will bring that to the Citizens Advisory Committee, and you may decide to do with it what you want. I think an important thing to touch on is that something that was discussed in our last meeting was that, hey, you know what? I sure hope that CAC can maybe vote one way or the other about PPPs, because we want to be sure that no one misrepresents how we feel about it, particularly in light of last year's legislation and the desire expressed by CAC to hear something heard. There had been some miscommunication, so I know the subcommittee had felt like once we bring this back to CAC, it might be nice to do a up or down vote on what we all feel about it. So in the meantime, what we're doing is trying to be objective, rational, non-political, and thorough, and look forward to having something to you in writing 2 months. We'll meet one more time next month, and we'll finalize it, and it will be sent out to you folks.
Tom, do you have a quick?
Yeah. Scott, I feel like the left out person since I'm the one who originally raised this question.
Oh.
And I requested to be on the subcommittee, and I haven't heard who was to when meet or where.
Oh.
So I'm feeling neglected, and I'd like to know how to feel not neglected.
Let us correct this immediately, and I'm sure that following the meeting, you and Miss Marion and I can speak and do whatever's supposed to be done to rectify that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Scott. Oh, there's a question, okay, sorry.
Following up to that, Scott, can you make sure that Marion lists who the members of the committee are and where the meeting locations are?
Yes, ma'am. To the greatest extent that I'm capable of doing all that you ask, I will.
Not a biggie.
Okay. Any other? All right. Other business. Is there any suggestions for future agendas? Okay, well, Gail first, and then Mary.
Mr. Chairman and members, recently there was an article in the newspaper about Kalihi, where the roads are bad roads. And according to the neighborhood board in Kalihi, this has been on their agenda almost every meeting for the past 10 years. The problem is that they have no sidewalks, they have a lot of potholes, they have winding roads, and it seems that the administration is saying they don't have the money, and so they've gone to the state to ask money. I would like to ask the CAC to have on their agenda as an agenda item where neighborhoods can come to the CAC and have an opportunity either on a regular basis or set aside one agenda so that these neighborhood needs can be presented. For example, in that situation, it was a severe need. There are children, there are old people who have to walk and use these streets.
Okay.
And it's not right that they have to wait 12 years in order to get this. So I would like to make that motion.
Does anyone second that motion?
I do.
Okay. All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Please stand up, Mary. Okay. All, anybody not in favor of the motion? Anybody abstaining? Okay. Well,
Not sure how much of a discussion we had on that motion,
hmm?
but I'd like to hear the motion.
Okay. Would you reframe the motion, rephrase the motion?
Yes. I'm asking the CAC to have on its agenda, either on a regular basis or to set aside a meeting where communities and citizens can bring their severe needs cases for the CAC to consider and to make recommendations for consideration of stating a severe need that is being neglected.
Okay, well, in other words, you want, as a motion, as an agenda item, to have the neighborhood problems brought up before us, right?
Yes, it could be also citizens.
Okay.
And
Yes. Well, citizens, I'm not sure. I think only members of the CAC would be bringing it up. If I'm
You're looking at me as if I'm going to give the answer. That's not a parliamentary answer. The neighborhood boards all have a time within their agenda for the neighbors to bring what they consider items. My thoughts would be, since they are being brought to those groups, that if you really want to know what their needs are, that you need to get those minutes and review them.
Okay.
Probably they're already told to. I don't know. But you,
Mr. Chairman, since I made the, I would like to make this point. The point is that this committee is making recommendations for projects, and also we should be identifying severe transportation needs.
Okay.
This process is completely absent under the present conditions.
Gail, what we'll do is we'll have, I believe we have the city, isn't Bill Brennan was supposed to come up with something in the winery situation? He's working on it. Maybe we'll just add this to the, besides the winery, we can also discuss it. Well, DTS was right. Okay. So we'll bring it up to DTS.
No, but we are an independent body.
I know,
And I'm
but-
just saying that the DTS is not handling this. So this committee
We
should
can
at
ask the
least have.
DTS to come and make a presentation on these items. And we can list the items. Mary?
You know, ever since I've been here, many times I have heard both the North Shore folks and the Waianae folks say, we have serious transportation issues, and I think we're all aware of that.
Okay.
But we never address them. And I don't understand why we ignore those two rural communities. Is
Well-
it because we're only metropolitan?
No. But we can bring the TCS people to come and make on these questions. We can list what we want them to discuss, and they can discuss it. Would that be efficient?
I think we should hear from the neighborhood boards, the reps from the communities that are having serious problems. That fits our structure.
Okay, we have, North Shore, do we have people from the North Shore?
We have.
Okay, why? I'll complain anytime you put it on the agenda.
All right. We'll set it up as an agenda item.
I've been on the OMPO here for, well, several years.
Yeah.
But I was also on the neighborhood board for at least 25 years. And the only times that the neighborhood board in Waianae has come, to my knowledge, come down to CAC is when I've done it myself. And I'm not as a member of the neighborhood board. The neighborhood board hasn't. I think they send their representatives. It seems to me that they already have what he's asking.
Okay. Yes?
Two very quick, when we took the vote, there were a lot of people that neither abstained or voted yea or nay. They didn't vote at all when we took a vote.